So boys, Kengan Omega chapter 144, a very controversial chapter in the fandom. One half, the Ryan fans eating amazing, I'm personally on this side, and then there's pretty much everyone else acting and looking like this, to be honest. If you're not aware, there was a translation change in the official release from Comic Key. This is a new panel regarding the poison. Instead of Edward pretty much stopping it, he only diverted it away from his artery, meaning he stopped himself from being instantly killed by the poison, but most likely, kinda implied here, he still got somewhat affected by the poison. Or if you just want to feel better about what Ryan did to him, I guess you could potentially say that, but that was changed in the new release. But above everything else, as a Ryan fan, my favourite character in the series, I am eating a feast with this chapter, while still admitting there is quite a few issues with this chapter that I'll talk about throughout today's video. But first, if you're new here and enjoy Kengan content, make sure you're subscribed, leave a like. Now, let's get into it. The title of the chapter is The Transcendent. My guess, The Transcendent refers to Kure Ryan and his kinda potential buff, his plot armor buff, his rage buff, whatever you want to call it. He got stronger in the later half of this chapter when fighting Edward. But we have Irio dying here, of course, as we expected. Irio wasn't going to last throughout this chapter. And we learned that she came up with a plan, with Irio revealing that throughout the branches of the Wu and Kure there are assassins and combatants, and that Edward would be the archetype of a combatant, with younger Irio also being a combatant, but he has grown too old, so I'm guessing he's more of an assassin type now. And do take note, Kure Ryan isn't part of this conversation. It's Kure, Irio, Wuzing, and then Hollis and the other dude, who can all be outlined as assassins in this situation, with Irio saying not even the four of us together could take him head on, referring to Edward, which means we'll have to face him as assassins. So they're going into the fight with a plan, while the likes of Kure Ryan, of course, is a combatant type, and crazy in his own regard, loving to fight, more so against the whole assassin tricks and everything that the likes of Irio and Wuzing were planning to use for this fight, which does explain Ryan's reaction in the later half of the chapter, with Irio also saying to everyone that sacrifices of course will occur, and he brought himself forward as the one to be sacrificed in this fight, which of course is what actually happened to allow Wuzing to land the poison blade on Edward. However, of course, Edward being an absolute beast doesn't go down after the poison blade, with Wuzing revealing that it's actually poison. That's the first mention of it, saying the poison's not kicking in, and then Hollis saying he diverted away from his artery. We do see Edward actually messed up quite a bit. That blade did go in quite deep, he's coughing up blood, so even if the poison wasn't affecting him a lot instantly, he still took a pretty decent amount of damage, and we do see Edward actually breathing hard in these various panels. So that poison blade shot did do some significant damage to Edward here, which is important to note, with Irio kinda smiling that not even a sneak attack was enough to take him out. And then our boy Kure Ryan, who didn't appear last chapter, comes walking in from behind, all triggered, and as he's walking up, we see his pretty much veins popping from his removal rage or whatever it is. As we know, he wasn't part of the previous conversation where they're going to try the whole assassin tricks, and this isn't part of Ryan's personality to actually do that. Edward calls him a cockroach, and then the final clash begins. Edward starts off by beating on Ryan quite a bit, punches him, throws him to the ground, then pulls out the Wu Clan ultimate technique. I'm still waiting for the Kure Clan ultimate technique, but this name is very sick. Mount Tai North Star Eightfold Demolition Fist. Very sick panel as well for Edward. I know a decent amount of people don't like this chapter whatsoever, but you gotta admit the art is pretty solid throughout. But he lands the Demolition Fist, which seems to be just a fury of strikes. I'm not sure how many. I see like 8 or 9 like impact shots here. However many it is, it's pretty crazy. But our boy Kure Ryan was able to tank every single one of them, showing how much stronger he has somehow got in this short time span, potentially due to his rage, or maybe this is Ryan going all out for the first time, but tanks all these crazy blows and then punches Edward back, which does some significant damage to him. and then they proceed to clash one another as pretty much equals. Edward punches him, Ryan punches him back, with Wu Xing pointing out that Ryan isn't backing down. The other Kure guy, are you kidding me, wasn't he dying just a second ago? With Edward as well being confused, questioning what's going on. How is he able to do this? It can't be possible. And then thinks back to something Iroh said earlier. You were too strong, that's why you lost. So my understanding is, at the start of the fight, Edward was much stronger than all of them, which of course resulted in his overconfidence, as such getting all his spares killed instead of finishing them off by himself, which he probably could have done. That's one reason he's lost. And then the other reason, something else Iroh also said early in the fight, that if he was in his prime, he'll be child's play to him, and that this person, Kure Ryan, will one day surpass me in my prime, and then proceeds to kill Edward Wu by sticking his finger in the wound hole from the blade, and then doing some razor's edge type finger slash slicing off Edward's head, with him saying, "You never stood a chance." So, a few things to talk about. Prime Iroh, confirmed, absolutely monstrous. Ryan's potential surpasses Prime Iroh and will one day surpass Prime Iroh. If you kind of take a step back, this does kind of fix this scaling a little bit. Edward isn't an insane amount over all the other top tiers. He's potentially stronger than all of them, as you could say the poison may have weakened Edward in this fight. And to be fair, he was kind of like 1v5ing for a little bit and winning, so Edward may have been worn out during this fight somewhat or weakened. Hopefully they explain some more information about this in the next chapter potentially, but it's also very possible and very clear that Ryan got a buff at the end of this chapter. It could be a potential buff, as something that's not too uncommon in the series. If you remember Cosmo, he got multiple like potential buffs throughout the Annihilation tournament. Ryan, who's pretty much has the most potential in the series in my opinion, should theoretically get the same treatment in some regards if he's pushed to the absolute limit like he has here. He's always been considered a monster even amongst the Kure, and you gotta respect Iroh's death here with a smile. That is pretty hype as well. But I'm still wondering how strong Prime Iroh was, and this does brighten up the future for Kure Ryan, the potential strongest character in the verse, when he reaches his peak or prime one day. But right here, he could very well take that spot for all we know. But I'm still, waiting for that Tiger Nico action. But now let's talk a little bit about Edward. Yes, of course, everyone wanted him to last a little bit longer. I did kind of predict his outcome. Iroh would die, resulting in a rage boost to Ryan, and Ryan to finish Edward. I kind of predicted that months ago, even here in the Discord server if you want to join to talk more about Kengan. But I've made theory videos and everything like that, so props to me. I'll give props to myself. But again, yes, Edward was monstrous, kinda got jumped by 5 or so people, was overconfident during the fight, which is probably the biggest downfall. Could have finished them all off before it was too late. Allowed himself to get caught off guard by the trap of the poison, and then giving Ryan enough time to unleash, I guess, his full potential. But one thing I'm not too sure about, what more did people really want from Edward? For him to defeat and kill the whole Kure clan? For him to potentially survive this fight and potentially be a final boss for Ryan in the future? That would have been cool. But I don't think Kengan's writing has really ever been like that, if I'm being honest. Ryan will always be Sandovich's little princess, as we've all been knowing for quite a while now. And as I've said 9 months ago in this video, Kure Ryan is unstoppable. So yeah, that should be everything for today's video. Very controversial. It's going to be very interesting to see the comments on today's video. Of course, a lot of people have been triggered and will be triggered about Edward's jobber treatment, even though I don't like saying that word, has been overused too much in the fandom. But yeah, that's everything for today's video. Check out all the other stuff in the description. Shout out to the absolute mad lads who support the channel via the Patreon. But yep, that's it guys. Peace.